When I started doing this, it was March, I believe, and then we had April and May, and now we're into June. And if anybody doubted, summer's coming. It's hot, and so Denise and I, over the past weeks, have got into a habit of walking every day, which was great. We used to really enjoy doing it in the evenings, but the evenings have got to be so hot. So rather atypically for us, we've been getting up. We got up for the last few days really early, and so it's been kind of amusing, because basically we're not people that normally get up early. If you leave us on our own, we're going to get later and later and later. But this morning we went out, and I noticed something yesterday. I saw it again today. And that is that when we went out into the desert and we started to walk, I noticed our shadows were like 50, 60 feet long. They were enormous. And of course, I knew why. And the reality was because the sun was so low in the sky that it was casting an enormous shadow. And I commented to Denise as we walked. I said, wow, that's kind of one of these moments. It's like, that'll preach. Because when the sun is low, our shadows are long. And I think that's true no matter how you spell sun, whether you spell sun S-U-N or S-O-N. When the sun is low, our shadows are long. But as he reaches ascendancy in our life, our shadows decrease. And so I thought today, how about we be people whose goal it is to cast no shadow? Wouldn't it be great if when people don't look at us, or when people look at us, they don't see our shadow, they don't see our personality and all the rest of it, but through us they see the Lord. So that was my early morning epiphany. So yesterday I asked everybody, are we bound by the Ten Commandments? Do they apply to us? And I asked you to enter on the screen, and a number of you did, and the ones that did unanimously said yes, we should answer or obey the Ten Commandments. And so I'm going to talk about the Ten Commandments a little, but the question comes up: why should we why should we obey the Ten Commandments? Are they applicable to us? And so I thought I would just talk about that for a few minutes today. I think when you say why should we, I think the first question is, who are we? When the Ten Commandments were given, they were given to the Israelites. They were given to a priest, to a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. They were a people set apart. And yet God, in his wisdom, still gave them some rules. And I think the same applies to us. We too are a kingdom of priests, and we're a holy nation. And I think it would be good if we were distinctive. Last night, the preacher at church talked about how many religions you can tell that they're a member of the religion by how they dress. You can't do that for us. We all dress differently. But I believe that it would be wonderful, wouldn't it, if when the world looked at us, they saw a different standard of behavior. So that's one thought. Second thought is, who gave us the law? Who gave us those Ten Commandments? And they came from God himself, right? I believe that the Ten Commandments and the requirements that he put on the children of Israel say something about him. What do I mean? Well, the Ten Commandments talk about how you behave to others. They say don't kill, don't steal, don't covet. So I think when you understand all that, it helps you further understand the Lord, right? His sense of honor, his worth, his majesty, his faithfulness, his yea be yea and his nay nay. That's what we're told. And I don't believe that we can set aside the Ten Commandments and our compliance with them without in some way disrespecting the Lord. Um, and let me go on to say, who gave them to us? He did. And what is his relationship to us? We are his children. We're his treasured possession, right? And we call him Abba. We don't understand that term a lot in English, but I guess it was about a year ago. A friend of mine was writing to his son, and what he had to say was some words of encouragement, and because there was some of that letter that pertained to me, he copied me on the letter. And when he got to the end, he didn't sign it Dad, or he didn't sign it with his name. He just said Abba. And it made me realize that his relationship with his son was very personal, and he was giving the recommendations and the advice that he was giving to his son because he loved him. And I believe that's the same for us. I believe that God put those rules in place for our good. Now, years ago when I was a small boy in the UK, when we went out, we were told, before you step off the curb, you got to look right, look left, and look right again. Well, back in the UK, that was because cars were coming from the right. If you did that here, you'd get pulverized. It's kind of funny, actually, when you go with Americans to the UK, you have to always have a handout ready for them because they look one way for traffic and zoom, it's coming the wrong way. Going to the UK is kind of funny because, everything's on the other side there. So I go over there. I don't have any trouble driving. Once I'm in a car and I'm all settled in, there's something about my brain that enables me to drive on the right side of the car. But I will tell you, on a number of occasions, I opened the car, gone to get in, and thought, oh, there's no steering wheel. And then I realized I'm getting in the passenger door. So then you have to sheepishly pretend, oh, that was intentional. And you put a bag in there or something. Then you walk around to the other side. But here's my point. I would be a foolish child. I would be a foolish young person if, when I got older, I intentionally set aside those rules that I was given to protect me in the first place. They weren't there to make life difficult for me. That look out for traffic, look right, look left, look right, was not some kind of weird protocol. It was a sensible thing that my parents put in place to protect me. And the question I have is, wouldn't it be kind of crazy to demonstrate a sense of independence and say, well, I'm not going to do that? I have to realize that these directions were given to me by our Heavenly Father. They were given not to me, but given to us by Abba. He's on our side. He's our Father. He gives commandments for our good. And we're going to get into some of the commandments. I think some of the commandments that we'll see, I think they all have value. They all have merit. Some of them are a little more difficult to interpret in today's world, but I don't think we should be dismissive of them. So the other question is, the Lord wrapped up the 10 commandments in 2, which was fantastic. It's a higher standard. I don't think the 2 displaced the 10. The 10, the Lord said he didn't come to destroy the law, he came to fulfill it. And here's 10 commandments that wouldn't it be fantastic if everybody in this world was living by those 10 commandments? Now you can say, well, there's all sorts of other laws. Do you know how many laws there are in the United States? It's a sort of trick question because I tried to look it up, and there are 20,000 laws on the books regulating gun ownership. In 2010, there were 40,000 new laws added at various levels throughout the country. The United States Code, which is just one accounting of federal laws, and it doesn't include a lot of the regulatory statutes, etc., but it has over 50 volumes. And then I also read that in 2008, a committee asked the Congressional Research Service to calculate the number of criminal offenses in the federal law. They responded 5 years later that they lacked the manpower and resources to fully answer the question. So I don't believe God's trying to put us in a box. I don't believe he's trying to restrain us. I believe he's trying to give us some guidelines. I think the Lord simplified it even more, but I still think there's value in looking at those 10. Now, some people rebel against law. Some people say, well, I don't think there should be any law. And then I have to look out into society and say, I'm sure grateful there are laws. I'm sure grateful, even though I sometimes have trouble obeying the speed limit, I'm grateful there is one. My wife will tell you I'm a little bit hypocritical in that regard, because I try to drive respectfully, but there's sometimes that I find myself zooming along, and she pokes me and says, well, if you were driving that fast through our neighborhood, you'd get mad. And I probably would. But the fact of the matter is, we need guidelines, we need rules, and I don't think we need to look at them as being restrictive. So as we look at the laws, as we're going to look at the 10 Commandments in the coming days, I want to ask you a question. What does it say about our relationship with Abba if we are looking for how few of what he told us to do can we get by with doing? Are there things that kind of like marginal? Well, I'm not sure about that one, so I'm going to put that on the sometimes list. You know, I'm always reminded of the guy that went for an interview as a chauffeur, and he was put in the car and he was told to drive around the estate, and there's one particular place where the road went really close to the edge of the cliff, and so the person doing the hiring was in the back of the car while this man was driving the limo or whatever it was. And after a little while, they came up to where that road was really close to the edge of the road. And the guy in the back said, look, I want to see how good your driving skills are. I want you to drive as close as you can to the edge. And so the guy drove up. And in the end, he turned around to the guy and said, I can't get any further than this. And the guy said, look, you're still 40 feet away from the edge. You can get closer than that. And the guy says, no, that's not how I drive. And he was the one that got the job. Because I don't think the test can be how little can we do, how close to the edge can we get, how many of the things that God's told us to do are maybe not what you consider mandatory. I just want to say maybe our standard should be, Lord, help me to do everything I can to live my life in a manner that's pleasing to you. Or to go back to the story of Denise and my walk this morning, to say, Lord, help me to walk in such a manner that my shadow is always short. So that's my thought for the day. How about that we do everything we can and to please the Lord. And if you can wrap everything up into the 2 commandments that the Lord gave us, great. But sometimes I think we need a little bit of detail, and the Lord gave us those 10 commandments. And then he said an even higher standard comes along. So there you go. That's my thought for the day. Sure love you all. Tomorrow will be Friday. Normally think of Friday as being the end of the week, but it's not. It's just another day. And so I'll see you again tomorrow. The Lord bless you, keep you, make his face to shine upon you, and give you peace. Amen. Love you.